What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Bass Fishing Declassified. In this video, I'm going to share the 3 rules of wintertime lipless crankbait fishing. Let's get into it. Rule number 1 is make contact. Whenever I'm fishing lipless crankbait in the wintertime, I want to be making contact with some type of cover. The main reason or idea behind this is that a lot of the bass that will eat this bait are going to eat out of a reaction strike. It's pretty cold in the winter. Water temps will a lot of times be below 50 degrees. And even though the bass are lethargic, you can still get them to actually react to a bait if it comes by their face relatively quickly, especially if it's kind of ripped past their face and then slowly flutters down in front of them. It kind of looks like a shad giving its last dying effort before it falls to the bottom, and a lot of times that'll get those fish to eat the bait. The way that you can kind of get the bait in that situation where it pops free and then slowly falls and dies is by getting it purposely hung up in cover. The 2 types of cover I really do this with are offshore grass as well as smaller chunk rock. Offshore grass is a really common place where guys are going to throw a lipless crankbait in the winter time. And the idea is that you throw this bait into a grass bed, purposely get it hung up, and then rip it free from the grass. You then let it fall back down into the grass, rip it free. Let it fall into the grass, rip it free. And by ripping that bait in and out of the grass, you're going to generate those reaction strikes. Now, you do have to make sure that you change out the treble hooks a lot of times on these lipless crankbaits to come through the grass a little bit cleaner. I always use EWG treble hooks. These are Gamakatsu size 4 EWGs. There's a bunch of different ones in the market though. And by throwing an EWG hook, you'll be able to rip that bait through the grass a little bit easier. And you also want to have a lipless crankbait that has a nice wobble or wiggle on the fall when doing this technique. I like the striking red-eye shad because it's just the most affordable and just easiest to get your hands on and works super well. So I always upgrade my stock treble hooks and again use that lipless crankbait that has a wobble on the fall, and you're going to get a lot of bites when you rip that bait free of cover. Now, in addition to grass, I also like to fish this bait around shallow rock. This is something a lot of guys don't do, but it's very popular in my area of the country in Arkansas. Basically what you're looking for are transition banks from pea gravel to chunk rock that's maybe the size of a golf ball to like baseball size rock. You don't want giant big rocks for this technique, but the idea is that you're going to again dig that crankbait into the rocks, bouncing the nose of that lipless crankbait off the rocks, and then once you kind of get it wedged up into a rock or kind of really grinding in the heart of a rocky spot, just pop your rod, rip it free, and let it fall back down to the bottom. You then grind it through the rocks a little bit more, hop your rod, and let it fall back down. These striking red-eye shads come through shallow rock surprisingly well. Maybe not as well as a swivel crankbait, but it really isn't that bad. And I grind the noses off of these baits. This is a newer one I got out of the package, but a lot of my lipless crankbaits are completely torn up. I even like wear holes in them because I grind them so shallow all day. You will get hung up, but a lot of times if you do get hung around those rocks, you can do the old slingshot technique where you just bring your line out and then pop it, and that'll pop that lipless crankbait free most of the time. And because you're up in kind of just shallower rock, you're not gonna be hung up so bad you won't be able to get your bait back. The only time you really lose these baits is if you do get around some wood, which a lot of times will cause it to get hung up, but I'm usually fishing this bait no more than 3 to 5 feet deep, so I can just get up there and pull it out with my rod, not a big deal. And that's kind of the first rule of wintertime crankbait fishing. Make contact. Again, trying to get a reaction strike and trying to make this bait do something irregular in the water. If you just reel this bait straight back to the boat a lot of times, you're not going to get those reaction strikes. Instead, you want to work that bait up, let it fall, work it up, let it fall. And a lot of your bites are going to come as that bait is falling back down, looking like a falling, dying bait fish.
Really quick, I want to let you know about a new seminar I posted on fishthemoment.com. This seminar is focused on finding patterns that forward-facing sonar anglers are missing. If you only have traditional 2D sonar, down scan, or side scan, and want to regain an advantage over all those scopers out there, this is the seminar for you. I'm going to be sharing patterns that are very hard to replicate with forward-facing sonar and show you on a lot of different lake types how to implement these patterns that catch big 5 bass limits, whether you're fun fishing or in tournaments. This seminar is happening on Friday, February 7th. You can participate live during the seminar, and you'll also receive a recording of the entire seminar afterwards that'll be emailed to you. Definitely check it out at fishthemoment.com.
Rule number 2 of wintertime lipless crankbait fishing is throw the kitchen sink. What I mean by this is you want to throw a bunch of different types of lipless crankbaits when you go to the lake in the winter time. It's really surprising how big of a difference different profiles, sizes, colors, and sounds can make in your success with lipless crankbaits. It's one of those baits that I find where actually the colors and the sounds make more difference than almost any other bait I throw. There are three I really focus on specifically, or at least three types of modifications. The first is the color. I am not super picky on the color, other than I like to have a red matte finish, and I also like to have a gold chrome finish. This chrome black back works really well. It's this gold chrome. You can also just do regular chrome black back as well if there's a lot of bait fish in the area. And you can go to a matte white finish as well to kind of imitate more of a shad, maybe like a sexy shad color. But in general, I stick with these two colors, I would say 85–90% of the time. And that matte finish a lot of times is going to be better on cloudier days and also in a little bit clearer water. And then the chrome finishes are going to be better on sunnier days, in clear water, and then in just dirty water overall. So really dirty water, those chrome, gold, black back lipless crankbaits are hard to beat. And again, on sunnier days, it will flash more. And then you'll go to more matte finishes on those cloudy days, or again, in that clear water situation. So that's the first change I will make to my crankbaits, just switching between these two types of colors. Next, I'm going to change the sound of my lipless crankbait. This can make a huge difference, especially if you get around a group of fish in like an offshore grass bed that's getting a lot of pressure. If a lot of anglers are fishing through those areas, a different sounding bait can make a big difference. And there are a bunch of different types of lipless crankbait sounds out there. The two most common are going to be your standard, just really loud rattling style bait. This is just the standard version of the striking red-eye shad. And then the next is going to be some type of one knocker or louder knocking crankbait. You also have the actual one knockers, the traditional one knocker, and you have silent lipless crankbaits. There's a Megabass silent lipless crankbait that I throw sometimes. Not necessarily my #1 option when I go to the lake, but if I am on a really good lipless crankbait bite and I've caught 5–6 fish out of a school, I might go to a silent lipless as well. The main thing is you want to just experiment with different types of sounds, because one day one sound might work better than the other. So I actually have striking red-eye shads in both this one knocker version, or this is the tungsten 2-tap is what it's called, and then also the standard BB sound, both in a red matte finish. And same thing goes with this chrome black back. I have the tungsten 2-tap as well as the regular sound in both these. So that's the other thing I'm going to focus on with lipless crankbaits, and I'm going to experiment with that throughout the day, switching them up maybe every 30 minutes just to see what's giving me the best success on that given day. The last change I'm going to make is to the size of my lipless crankbait. A lot of times going to a bigger lipless crankbait will get you more and bigger bites. And I think that part of that comes from just this bigger profile is going to off-put more water and displace more water, which when those fish are really lethargic may make them a little bit more aggressive, and it also will call them from a longer distance to come actually check out and eat this bait. In addition, it's going to fall faster. So when you have water temperatures that are above 45 degrees, that faster fall after you rip it and let it fall is going to generate a lot more bites at times if the fish are very aggressive compared to a 1/2 ounce lipless crankbait. I throw, again, 3/4 ounce lipless crankbaits at times. I even have 1 ounce lipless crankbaits that I throw depending on the situation. And if I'm fishing, deeper grass and 20 feet of water, I'll go to even a 1 ounce lipless. And I have all kinds of lipless crankbaits in my box. It's actually overflowing right now. I have to kind of clean it out a little bit because I can barely get the cover closed on that box. But there's so many different types I've experimented with, and I've caught them on so many. A lot of times I feel like too, it's just a confidence thing, switching it up in the winter. Fishing can be tough, so by changing up your bait and changing up the look, sometimes it's just a confidence deal where you can give yourself a, revitalized confidence in a technique and allow you to throw it for a few more hours to finally land on the fish. So those are the few modifications I would make: color, sound, and size. The third rule of wintertime lipless crankbait fishing is commit, commit, commit. When you're fishing a lipless crankbait in the winter, you have to commit. And I would compare it almost to throwing a buzzbait or a whopper plopper in the summertime and the fall. If you guys fish topwaters or watched my 3 rules video earlier in the year about fishing a buzzbait, then the rule is actually very similar to what I talked about back then. You have to lock this lipless crankbait in your hand for a long period of time to actually get the number of bites you need or to put a 5 bass limit in the boat. I started out fishing lipless crankbait in central Arkansas and not really liking it that much because I would only get a couple bites on it a day, and I didn't feel like it was a great bait for me because I would throw it for 3-4 hours and only get 2 bites, and in a tournament I wanted to get more bites than that. So I would go to other techniques, and while I would have success, I would still be getting beat by all these guys who said they're throwing lipless crankbaits. And I thought they were just, blowing smoke, but it actually turned out that that was the bait they were all using. And after I kind of locked it in my hand for 8 hours, a few trips in a row, I realized that there are flurries you're going to go through with the lipless crankbait, just like with a buzzbait or a whopper plopper. Most of my bites on lipless are going to come in a 1-hour period throughout the day, whether that's the first hour of the morning, the last hour of the day, or somewhere in between. And I might catch 3 or 4 fish in that window, and they're all going to be really good ones most of the time on this bait. You're going to be catching keeper fish, if not kicker fish on this. And as long as you're varying up the types of areas you're fishing and the types of lipless crankbaits you're throwing, usually you're going to land on a good combination throughout the day if you throw it long enough. The key is making sure you're in those productive zones for as long as possible. So you want to be around that grass, in those rock transitions. Don't just fish a bunch of random banks. Find those transition zones from the smaller pea gravel to the little bit bigger chunk rock, or just find those little depressions in the grass, small ditches, drains, things like that, and stick this bait in your hand and just throw it and throw it and throw it. The lipless crankbait, again, is definitely more of a timing related bait. I feel like more so than any other bait I throw. And it's really tricky in the wintertime to maintain confidence in any bait. But one thing I will say is that the reward is so high that it keeps me coming back to throwing lipless crankbaits every single winter. The ability to catch a 3 to 5 pound bass consistently is really valuable in tournaments, and that's what this bait can provide on pretty much any lake across the country. Most lakes are either going to have some type of grass or some type of rock transition in them. If it doesn't, then maybe you're kind of out of luck on that deal, but I feel like on most lakes across the country, you're going to have one of those 2 things in the winter time to throw this bait at. So I basically always have one of these on the deck of the boat, no matter where I'm going in the winter time. A lot of times I'll have multiple tied on, just depending on the situation, and I am going to always pick this up at least a few hours throughout the day to see if I can get a bite. And if I can get 1 to 2 bites on it in those first couple of hours, I'm gonna lock it in my hand the rest of the day and just throw it and throw it and throw it until I get a nice 5 bass limit. Hopefully this video is helpful, guys, and you learned something from this 3 rules. If you enjoy this content, make sure you subscribe down below for more bass fishing declassified content just like this. Thanks for checking out this video. We'll see you all in the next one.